So now that we've talked about different types of television and radio stations, I want to talk about how that they kind of work in different cities, because something a station in a small town is not going to work quite the same as a station in a large metropolitan area. And one of the things that they talk about is how a station is grouped and the number of people they reach. And this is what's known as a designated market information. And this is where we get a lot of our information about programs and televisions that we use today. So a market area is known as a DMA, a designated market area. And this is basically just simply called a market or a DMA. And this is a region where the population of a city or area can receive the same or a similar television or radio stations offerings. So what this basically means is, in a city, if they have a television that is broadcasting a signal over the airwaves, and it can be an analog or digital signal, that signal can only go so far. And then based on the number of people that fall within that range, kind of helps determine the market size that they're in. So a city like New York is going to be reaching millions of people in kind of almost the same area that like a smaller city that has a transmitter. They may cover the same mileage or the same amount of distance, but they're not going to reach as many people because their population is not as dense as a large city like New York or Los Angeles. Now, they can coincide or overlap with at least one or more metropolitan areas through rural regions, with a few significant population centers following that. So in this case, it talks about like there may be a city that is so big that one broadcast can't reach everybody. So they may have a smaller signal off to the side that's going to reach a smaller group of people. So thus you have two different DMAs that are going on. So they may also look at an area where a signal is spreading and it might meet multiple cities. So for example, a signal in Texas can cover both Dallas and Fort Worth at the same time because of how far that signal can spread. It can encompass both cities. In Alabama and Florida, there is another overlapping of cities for Mobile and Pensacola. Down in Texas, they actually have 3 cities that are covered by the same area of a broadcast signal, and that's going to be your Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Sarasota. Now, also, very large metropolitan areas can sometimes be subdivided into multiple markets. So like I said before, if a signal can't reach an entire city populace, then they may have another signal offset in the more rural areas or outskirts of the city that are going to cover them. And that's going to give you a smaller DMA market area. Now, you can also have market regions that are going to overlap, that people residing on the edge of one media market may still be able to receive content from other nearby markets. So, whoops, wrong button. Let me get back to me. There I am. So one of the things is, in the case of Troy, we are about an hour from Dothan and an hour from Montgomery. Now, through cable television, we've been designated that we are part of the Montgomery DMA. But if we pull up an antenna to receive a signal that's being broadcast over the air, since we're kind of in between both the city, we can get both of those signals. So they wanted to make sure that markets may overlap a little bit, but they're also starting to move to separate those markets as we get more and more into the digital age. So let's take a look at some of the markets in the United States. And I'm going to get out of the way. So when we're looking at, these are the numbers of television homes or households that are reached. The number one market in the United States is New York. They're going to reach 7.1 million husholds. Now, these aren't just people, these are entire households. So this could be a family, a group of roommates. It could be a small family of a husband and wife. It could be a bigger family of a husband and wife and their 7 kids. But they're reaching 7.1 million homes. The second one on the West Coast is going to be Los Angeles. And then we're going to get into Chicago in the upper center. We got Philadelphia. Number 5, the Dallas and Fort Worth cities are coming in. Number 6 is Washington, D.C. 7 is coming in at Houston, Texas. So you can see we've got 2 major cities, but their populace and DMAs are slightly different. So we've moved from the number 5 ranking down to the number 7 ranking. We've got San Francisco on California. So even from Los Angeles to San Francisco, we've moved from the number 2 market down to the number 8. You've got number 9 in Boston, and number 10 is coming in at Atlanta's coming in at number 10. Now let's look at a couple other markets. So in Southeast Alabama, much near us, we've got Mobile, Alabama. This is the number 58 market. Coming in at 100, we've got Boise, Idaho. Number 150 down at Panama City. And the smallest market that we have in the United States is in Glendive, Montana. And this is the number 210 market. So we're moving from, oops, wrong button again. There I am. So we're moving from, in the United States, there are currently 210 television markets. So looking at the very top, so we've got New York, the number 1 market's reaching 7 million people. Glendive, Montana is reaching 3,590. I guess I got to go that way. 3,590. So you can definitely see that they're basically kind of the same signal area is reaching a vast difference in the number of households and people that they can come into contact with. So if you're looking for a job, or you're looking at media market DMAs in the Southeast, and in case like you're looking for a job in television, you may wind up graduating from Troy, and you're going to wind up getting a job in a medium-sized market like Montgomery at 122 or Dothan at 173. You'll spend a couple of years there, and then you may move from a medium market to a smaller market, or I guess a bigger market, even though the numbers are getting smaller. So cities like Mobile coming at 58 or Birmingham coming in at 45 would be a good jump. From there, if you want to move into one of the top 10 markets, you could come into Atlanta, which a few years back was actually number 9, and then they've recently kind of slid into number 10. So you can't just normally graduate college and then just go and become a head anchor at one of the major cities. You're going to have to work your way through various stations and various sizes to get the experience that you need to move into the larger cities. So you can kind of see that again. I'm going to go back and let's see. Montgomery moved from 122 up to 116. Birmingham moved 45 to 43. Dothan and Mobile stayed the same. And again, Atlanta fell a spot and went from number 9 to number 10. So I want to show you an example of one of our students who graduated, Chris Cato, in the class of 1999. So he had graduated from Troy State, and he wound up getting his first job. When he left, he was a sports reporter and a sports anchor, so he had a lot of experience in sports. He wound up going to Panama City, Florida, which was a 150 market station, as a news reporter. Then he went up to number 38, which was in Greenville, South Carolina, and he still was doing reporting, but now he was anchoring on the weekends. So moving from reporting to anchoring was a prestigious jump for him. Then he went from a number 38 to a number 4 market, quite a jump, where he was now in Sinwide, Philadelphia, as a reporter and an anchor, possibly a backup anchor, but he was still kind of not a main anchor. So he wound up taking a cut and going from a 4 down to an 11 station, where he's now a co-anchor on the 11 p.m. news. So this is the position and the level that he ultimately wanted to be. When he left, he said, you know what, I would love to be an anchor on a news desk. And he was that on a weekend anchor. He was a backup anchor and a reporter. But then finally he had the opportunity, the experience, and the polish to become a co-anchor for a bigger station, even though he wound up taking a cut in pay and market size, going from 4 down to 11. So that's going to be a look at how DMAs affect how stations look, how they operate. And a lot of times the resources that go into a station are going to be determined by the market area going into it, because it also determines, or it's relied on about how many people see their signal. And so you have companies that look at statistics to see how things fall in DMAs and marketplaces, and how that's going to evolve or change the way that a station behaves, or its policies, or things that it does. So now that we've talked about different types of stations and the way they operate, in stations of various sizes, one of the things I want to look at is now kind of what goes on inside a television stations and the various departments that help function to put a station together. Now, when you look at a station from the outside, there's going to be a lot of similarities going on. You're going to see things like they're going to have a couple of satellite dishes that they're able to receive signals coming from satellites. They're also able to transmit signals up to satellites that can be redistributed to other stations or other receivers. You're going to see that they're going to have a microwave tower. So they're going to have a tall tower that's going to have some small dishes that are directional. And so they're able to use what's called a microwave, which kind of works like what's in your kitchen, that is beaming a signal. In this case, the signal incorporates audio, video, data from one point to another. There have been times when a reporter can use a van that has a microwave transmitter and beam a signal back to the station. And for many years, the microwave was the way we would do a live shot. You would have a reporter go to a location. They would have a van that would have a microwave transmitter that they would kind of raise up above the van, point it at the station. Point it at the station, and then beam that signal back. So they could do a live shot from location, and they didn't have to rely on just being in the studio. Another thing that you're going to probably wind up seeing a lot are going to be production trucks and vehicles that are going to have the station's logo, and they're going to identify the station as its call letters, its network's affiliation, and it's going to be advertisement. So if there's an event going on, if you are driving past a building that's on fire, and you happen to see that there's a vehicle in front that's going to say WSFA channel 12, then you know when you go home tonight and you look at the news, well, WSFA had a van out there. Let me watch the news and on WSFA and see what video and information they had. So one of the things I'm about to do is I'm going to kind of go over and talk a good bit about all the various departments that are going on in a television station. But to help you out, I'm going to have a copy of this, the NAB Careers Guide, up on Canvas for you to look at, and it's going to help cover all the positions that we're going to go over with. I'm also going to have a handout of the organizational charts that go into a station as well. So this way you're not having to get hand cramps from taking all these notes and all these drawings. So they're going to be up on Canvas for you. So let's begin. When we're dealing with network organizations, especially with the O&O, or with even media groups, you're going to have the president that are going to call a lot of the shots. So you're going to have the president of NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox are going to run the entire network. And then down at the local level of each city, you're going to have a person who's the general manager in charge of that station. And a station is more than just news. It's also going to be productions and other aspects. And so the station manager, the general manager, has other departments reporting to them, like news, sales, programming, things that go on the air, the chief engineer of the department in charge of technology, and then also the business manager, so the department that's going to be in charge of the finances. So let's go ahead and look at one of the positions was the news director, and news has two sides to it. It's got the business side and then the information side. So at the beginning of a news organization, you're going to have the news director. This is the person in charge of all the content that the station puts out for their news. They have a person that's going to help them, the assistant news director. And then underneath them, they have, again, a variety of various positions and jobs that are going to help them out. So you've got the managing editor, you've got the business operations manager of news, you've got the futures planner and editor. So this is a group that's going to look at things that are coming up that they can use to make money. It doesn't have to necessarily be news, it could be non-traditional. You've got the assignment desk. So this is the person that is assigning work and projects to everybody in the news department. And then you've got special projects. So news organization isn't just breaking latest information and news. There may be special projects that they're going to be putting together to distribute information out to their viewers. So now that was the business side. On news, let's look at the news side. And this is the face of what a lot of people see when they turn into television at 6 or 10 or in the morning. So again, you have your news director and your assistant news director. Underneath them, you've got the producers. Now, the producers are the groups of people that gather all the content and put it together into a 30-minute show that is organized, makes sense, and provides information. They also make sure that that show falls within their allotted time. So a news segment or a newscast cannot go over or under their specific time slot, or they're going to get cut off by the next program. So the executive producer is the one in charge of all the producers. And then you may have a senior producer for a show, and they may have like other producers that are going to help them out. So in larger cities like New York, Los Angeles, you're going to have a slew of people working together on one show. In a smaller city like Montgomery or Dothan, you may have a single producer working on a show. They're going to have associates that are going to help them out. They're going to have possibly news writers that are going to help them type scripts and move contents. So the next job we have is the assignment desk chief. And I'm going to talk about more of them in the producing segment of the course. But in real quick, this is a person who's in charge of organizing all the reporters and videographers that are out shooting video and putting together stories. For the longest time, they used to have like a dry erase board with all the names, times, and locations and how far they're stretched out. We've kind of moved into the digital age, so now they can kind of type it out and everybody can have access to this information through a computer, their cell phone, or they would also have it put up on a very big board on the wall that would be projected, or a large television, so reporters could come in, see what they've got to do, and move on. You've got the special projects editor. So in addition to the latest news and information that's going on, there may be a series of stories that the station wants to promote about an event coming up. So they may have a special projects for that. You've got the news assistant who's kind of helping a bunch of various departments. So the assignment desk chief can take a news assistant and say, hey, here's some information, run it over to the 6 p.m. producer and let them know that this is coming. Now, the next group is a new position that's come out in the last few years. Since more and more people are getting their news and information from, you've got it, cellular phones and social media and the internet. And it's no longer just traditionally the nightly news from the television. A group called the digital producers has been created. The digital producers are a group that's going to monitor social media. They're going to put information on social media, and they're going to be able to take things from social media and their websites and put it into the news program. So with this, you may watch a news story and they're going to say, we're going to have more information for this story up on our website. Or likewise, in social media, they may send out a Twitter or a tweet saying there was a fire downtown, tune in tonight at 5 to find out more about it. So the digital producers are kind of running both sides of the web interface. If they're going to be putting it on the webpage, on their social media, or if they're going to be pulling it back into that other content. And then, since you guys are all broadcast journalism students, at some point in your student career, we're going to ask you to do an internship. And with an internship, you're going to spend time at a professional station or media company of your choice, learning how they work, getting experience by working with them and working on their projects. So a lot of times TV stations will have college students or people wanting to learn the trade will come in and will be an intern that can provide various assistance to many of the departments. If it's going to be an assignment desk, having them listen for particular things on police band, radio band, or if it's going to be a producer saying, hey, take these 3 stories, I want you to change the information from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. and get that back to me in a matter of minutes or before the next show. So interns are going to be kind of observing, but also working to see how behind the scenes a television station operates. So that's the behind the scenes of television news. Now let's get into in front of the camera or the news side. And again, we're dealing with the main head of on air is going to be the news director and the assistant news director. Underneath them, they're going to have your news anchors. So your people who are sitting behind the desk, providing that professional face and that professional look for the station. They've got the reporters who are going out, gathering information, shooting and editing stories, and putting their stories on the air. Now, sports is a unique department, especially here. Sports is a very important part of news, and because of this, and a lot of different sporting events are happening, especially in towns with college sports, you're going to have sports tends to have their own department. So they have their own sports director, and the sports director is in charge of sports anchors and sports reporters. So they're making sure that all this is getting covered for their segment of the news. Whereas the others, news and anchors and reporters, report to the news director. The sports director still has their own people underneath them. Then you've got your weather anchors. They may have like senior anchors and junior anchors, but the weather department is going to respond to the news director and assistant news director. You've got, in some of your bigger cities, they're going to have access to their own helicopter. I've seen in cases of like morning shows, they may have a helicopter looking at traffic to tell people what traffic is going to be like on the major interstates in a large city. There may be time when news is breaking and they want a perspective that they can't get from the ground, so they'll have a helicopter. One of the big examples was the O.J. Simpson. When he was on the run from local authorities, he hopped into his car and proceeded to drive down the interstate. So it was too dangerous for a news van to try to go alongside him, keep up with him, and shoot footage. So in this case, they had a helicopter that could cover greater ground, and they could basically follow the entire police chase as it unfolded without putting anybody in danger. And then again, even on news side, they're going to have so I'm going to go back to helicopters. So helicopters have been around for a while, and they're also starting to be replaced with drones. Drones are small mechanical devices that can be flown by a single operator, and that operator can stay on the ground and send the drone, which is like a flying camera, up to cover something. So there are some limitations that drones have restrictions by the FAA, Federal Aviation Group, that limits kind of how far they can go, how fast they can go. But also drones tend to have limited battery. So a helicopter may have an hour's worth of flight time or 30 minutes worth of flight time. A drone may have less than that. They may have like 15-20 minutes before they run out of power and fall out of the sky. But they are starting to transition a lot of things from helicopters to drones and technology like that. And then, of course, on air, they have access to the interns. So the interns are going to spend some time learning behind the scenes, but also in front of the camera. They're going to learn from the news anchors how to articulate, how to read, how to present themselves. They're going to go with the reporters and learn how to shoot and edit. They may go with sports and help cover sporting events, or they may assist the sports director in keeping up with the latest scores of a game before they go out on the air. So even the internships are getting involved in this aspect of news to try and find and learn a little bit more about the program. Now, we're going to get into one of my favorite departments, production. So this is the behind the scenes and technology that's going to go into it. So for a newscast, you're going to have a person that's called the director. They're going to take the scripts and information from the producer, and they're going to put that content on the air. They're going to be in charge of switching between the anchors when they do an introduction to a story, back to the anchors. If there's a live shot, they're ready to switch back and forth between the anchors and the live shot. In much of your larger stations, you're going to have two directors. Your main one has a copy of the scripts, and they're calling the shots. And then next to them is going to be a technical director. This is the person in charge of pushing all the buttons. And so the technical director will listen to the director, and the director will say, coming to camera one, and the technical director will put camera one up. Then the director will say, all right, stand by the first story. Technical director will hit a button and push that story up. Now, a lot of times for each show, the producer that has scripted everything out, put the show in order, is going to stand near or sit near the directors, and the producer is going to have a copy of their rundown, the order of the show and the content in it. They're going to have copies of scripts, and the producer is going to make sure that their show that they produce runs smoothly. If something happens and a sudden change needs to be made to the show, if a story is suddenly not ready, or if a reporter didn't get a story edited in time, the producer is right there to say, okay, we're going to take the story and move it down to give the reporter time to finish. Or if something important and news breaking happens, then the producer can say, okay, this big event just came out, we're going to play it next. And so the producer is going to be next to the director, and they're going to help organize their show. Now, in the world of production, you've got a bunch of various positions. So you've got cameras and camera operators. Most stations have about 2 to 3 cameras that are constantly getting various shots. You've got an audio operator, the technical director. And in some of the smaller markets, your newscast director and your technical director are the same person. So in many of your smaller communities where they don't have as much news as they might from a major metropolitan city, they're able to squeeze that position into one person. You've got your video player who's going to, again, queue up video clips or tapes and get them ready to go. You've got graphics and animations that are going to go over the anchor's shoulders. Remember how we talked about that OTS shot, that over the shoulder? Well, you've got this person who's building it and loading it. You've got name graphics. And then teleprompter. In the studio, there is a person sitting at a computer running that teleprompter to go along with the anchors so they can read the scripts. Now, we're starting to move into an evolution of new ways of doing productions. Things like cameras and audio, video, teleprompters are now being incorporated into a piece of software. So you're not needing operators to handle all this technology. The cameras are being replaced with robotic cameras, and there is a grid along the floor. So the cameras can be programmed to go from grid point A to B to C, and then to even tilt up, zoom in, get a wide shot. And all that can be encoded into the scripts that the anchors are reading. Now, sales. Each station, you have to have money. You have to be able to pay for all the technology and all the people involved. And so with that, you've got sales. And the head of the sales department is the director of sales, or the general sales director. And they've got different places that they can get advertising from. So you may have a national sales manager that's talking to major companies throughout the entire country that are trying to sell or endorse products for a major brand. So it may be like the Toyota company is talking about their latest car or their latest truck, whereas a local sales manager may be a car dealership talking about their local sale of the Toyota trucks or the Toyota cars. Next department, you've got marketing and directing and non-traditional revenue. So one example is a TV network has advertising on billboards on the street. Some of these billboards are printed, some of them are electronic, and they're able to come up with different ways to change the advertising for their station. So again, local sales manager and sales assistants, they're going to be going out to local businesses, and they'll say, you know what, our 6 o'clock news was one of the most watched newscasts in the city for 6 o'clock. We'll be happy to sell you advertising space. So they'll go to local business people to try and get money to advertise for their own station, in addition to the national. And then you've got the account executive, who's kind of in charge of keeping up with all of the sales, all the ads that are kind of being incorporated, and how long an ad's going to run. So if one company's or one city's, if one business says, you know what, I'm going to pay for 5 advertisements, then the account executive can drop the contract saying 5 advertisements for this rate is going to cost you this much. Now, the next department is known as traffic. Traffic in this case does not relate to vehicles or automotive. Traffic is relating to the commercials that are aired on a television or a newscast. So like I talked about before, when the business contracted to have their advertisement run for 5 times, then traffic has a log of every time that that advertisement has run, and they will check it off, and they will make sure if they ran 4 times, then traffic will be like, hey, we've got to run it a 5th time. If they accidentally ran it 6 times, then traffic will get with the account executive from sales and figure out a way to work it out. Do they want to bill them for the 6th run? Do they want to just give them a freebie, which means, like, you know, they're not going to pay for this advertisement, they get free advertising, which would not be fair to other business offerings. So traffic is the department that's keeping up with when ads run and how often they run, and that they meet their contractual obligations. Up next is research. Television stations and news are constantly doing research to find information and make sure that what they present is correct. So market research could come out and say, if you ever see an advertisement saying that we're the #1 news source in 6 o'clock news, or ABC 17 is the #1 ranked news at 5 a.m., they're going to need a department to verify that information. Research is going to come in and do that. If a reporter is trying to get some information for the number of people that voted in the last election in the city, then the reporter could talk to the research department to find that information out as well. So research can aid not only like promotions in the business, but they can also help the news organizations and reporters. Our next group is what's known as creative services and promotions. This is a small little production house that puts together commercials and creative ways to do other types of services. So they may go in and at the beginning of a newscast, they may have an animated opening, or right before sports, they may have a graphic with some music that says, "Now with sports, here's Ernie Powell." And this is going to be created by the creative services. Likewise, if a sales department has talked to a small business, a local business, and they want to put together a commercial, creative services and sales can get together and put together a commercial using their department. So they can get things like the writer and producer to create a script. They can get an editor to go out and maybe shoot and edit some footage of the business and edit together a commercial. You're also going to find that stations will have their own personal announcer. So they're going to have a single voice that is almost identifiable with that station, that's going to say, tonight we've got Rock Center with Brian Adams. Or they may say, you know, Eyewitness News has Sandy's Aftermath continuing coverage tonight at 7 online. They're going to have that same voice doing all the work for their station, so that voice becomes a part of their brand and a part of their identity. And likewise, you've got another person who's the art director, who is making sure that everything looks good, it looks aesthetically pleasing, and that there are certain rules that have to be followed in the realm of a station. So in the case of this graphic in the bottom right, they've got their ABC logo right on the edge of their 7 logo. And you can also see that it's not overlapping any other fonts, that it is kind of by itself. Likewise with the WPXI and the NBC, they've got a certain amount of space between them. The logos are aligned, it looks good, and your art director is making sure that everything follows under those guidelines and those categories. Up next is the program director. This is the person that determines and schedules all the content that airs on a station. And they make sure that there is no empty spaces or dead space between episodes. Likewise, in the case of like syndication, if you have a show that comes on every day at 4, like Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, they make sure that they air in the proper order. So it's going to go episode 4, then 5, then 6. That way, if you have a contestant staying over to the next episode, it makes sense. Likewise, if they have programming coming in, they're making sure that the right programming is airing at the right time. So they're going to schedule the Insider for 1:30 p.m. And then at 2, they're going to say, you know, Flip My Food with Chef Jeff. So they're making sure that that program is coherent and it's always coming in at the same time. Likewise, they will look at the program and see how long it is. Not all programs are a solid 30 or 60 minutes. They're going to have gaps in between them to make room for commercial breaks. And so there may be a show that has a 2-minute break in the middle or a 1.5-minute break. And the programming director makes sure that all those gaps and all those commercials and all that content is filled, and that there is no moment of just like 5 seconds of black or 10 seconds of black that we're just hanging around and waiting. So that's going to come from your programming department. The next group is engineering. Engineering is the department that handles all the technical hardware that is in use at a TV station. The head of engineering is the director of broadcast operations and engineering, the BO&E. It's also called the chief engineer. Underneath them, they may have a group of people like technical operations. So sometimes like videographers may fall under news organization, or they may fall under engineering. You've got crew chiefs, you've got technical resources. Master control is a person who sits at the TV station and they control the signal that leaves the station. So they're switching from a video server that's playing the ads to the satellite that's broadcasting the live signal. If it's like a baseball game or a football game, they may have a break that's national ads, and then they may have a break that's local ads. So the master control operator will wait for the national ads to finish, and then they'll switch to the local, play the local, switch back to the game. So you've also got other departments like the broadcast operations manager, who kind of keeps an eye on the facility, make sure everything like the satellites, the transmitters and receivers are operating properly. You've got entry-level engineers who are kind of going to be along with the engineering technicians who are in charge of who are in charge of fixing broken equipment. So if a reporter comes in and they're like, hey, I'm sorry, I dropped my camera, can you fix it? They'll bring it to the engineering department to make sure that gets run. And so, like I said, all this information, all the jobs, and a little bit more detail about each of the jobs are in the NAB's career guide, and that is going to be up on Canvas. So that's a look at the major departments in a TV station, as well as a lot of the positions in those departments, so you kind of get a good feel for how a station operates and how it's just not one single entity that's working to get all this together, but quite a few people and quite a few